Today's consciousness talk is called Spirits Having a Human Experience, the Stranger in a Strange Land Syndrome. This talk came to me, it started coming to me, for lack of a better term, several nights ago. As usual, I am one of those people that wake up at 3 a.m. and start getting inspired, or as some of us call it, we get the cosmic download, and you need to do this and you need to do that. And I was contemplating this whole shamanic philosophy of having one foot on every plane of consciousness. And I've spoken about this before, when I was going through my early stages of spiritual teachings and development in my early 20s, several decades ago. The teacher said to me, my teacher said to me, you want to learn how to keep one foot on every plane of consciousness and to develop the ability to alter your state of consciousness at will. We're going to get into that in just a second. Well, throughout tonight's talk. For me, it was always very strange growing up. I always felt like a stranger in a strange land, and it wasn't that I felt insecure. It wasn't that I had low self-esteem. I always pretty much had very big self-esteem, very proud young man, very talkative, and quite spoiled, actually. And I just remember, different instances when, I would see something my parents would do, or I would see something some of my friends would do. I'd be like, that's just not. It's not something I feel is natural. It was this whole concept of popularity, or the whole concept of even team sports. I thought was very strange. It was like it's a little barbaric, And of course I did it, but anyway, it just goes on to support my idea that I felt like a stranger in a strange land. As a child, I did have the psychic abilities. I had magical abilities. I was able to see, I don't want to say ghosts, maybe spirits. I was attacked by spirits, a lot of paranormal stuff going on there. And I'm not the only one. Actually, there is a book, if I'm not mistaken, called A Stranger in a Strange Land. And the premise of that book is an alien loses his family, and he's adopted by a human couple and raised human. Meanwhile, he doesn't realize it, but he's actually like from Mars or something like that. I forgot the premise. I'm just kind of like quote unquoting here. But he always felt out of place with humans and the way human culture and society was. And I know that many of us out there, when we are going through this awakening process, or acknowledging the awakening process, because until you acknowledge it, you don't even realize that perhaps things are not clicking for you as an individual, things are not clicking for you as a human being. But like I said, many of you are constantly writing me about this quote unquote syndrome, the stranger in a strange land syndrome. Many of us feel like we're not connected, that everyone is like a, how do I say it? Kind of like that. I guess the Matrix is a good way of saying it. I'm at a loss for words right now on that particular topic. But the idea that it's kind of like a show going on around you. What is this? There's war. There's mean people. There's ignorant people. There's harmful people. And meanwhile, many of us find that to be very unnatural. We do, of course. Humanity wants to survive. Of course, we have survival instincts. Of course, we have a protective instincts. But all in all, our natural way of being as humans is to be very social and to be very loving and accepting. Yeah, think about it. You remember when you were a kid? Did you care? You would walk up. I remember seeing kids. I was for a little while there, I was taking secondary education in college, back in my college years. And one of the things I had to do was be a teacher's assistant for a preschool. And actually, I was very lucky because I got to work in downtown Miami with at-risk children. And I just remember, we had kids in there that were abused. We had kids in there that had HIV. We had kids in there with other diseases and other disabilities, very, very poor children, at risk, whatever falls under the umbrella of at risk. And, the kids with the walker or the wheelchair, or the kids with the ripped clothes, or the grubby, dirty palms and whatnot, and nobody cared. The kids didn't care. When they were out on that playground, or they were in the classroom, they all loved each other. They would walk up to the stranger and, oh, does that hurt? Are you okay? If they saw something. So to me, what that tells me is, no matter and by the way, there was multiple skin tones across the rainbow. I mean, this is Miami. We had everything from pure white to pure black and everywhere in between. And the kids just did not care. They wanted to make a friend. They wanted to smile. They wanted to give them a hug. They wanted to hug back. Children are so beautiful in their innocence in this way. And with that is where I come from in saying that humanity, our natural instinct is to be loving, to be social, to be accepting, to want to unite with each other and get to know each other. It's a part of our natural instinct. It isn't until we get older that this instinct is trained out of us. Fear is put in. Oh, you can't trust strangers. You can't trust, and for good reason. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of strange people, but again, it comes through that conditioning of allowing fear to come in. So this whole idea of stranger in a strange land, again, coming back to the topic that I'm talking about, some of us have always clung to that idea that humanity can be loving, humanity can be supportive, humanity can heal itself, humanity is going to get better. It's always going to get better. And whether you want to say that we were the indigos or the rainbow children or whatnot, I do believe that it is a natural instinct that gets bred out of us as we get older. And I believe that there is a certain process that goes along with that. That would be the incarnation and maturity process. And I don't want to get into that too much right now because we've only got about 2 more minutes left. But I will say that the idea that we are put here to become socially acceptable, to become a part of the social machine, to assimilate into a particular culture, to assimilate into a particular society, is probably the worst preconcepts that we could give to ourselves and to our children. I find, quite honestly, the whole idea of telling expatriates or those that have moved from one country to another that they must assimilate into that culture to be one of the most destructive things that we can do, to lose our individuality. And it's funny that it's the ones who say, oh, the New World Order just wants us all to look alike and think alike and talk alike, are the very ones that are proposing that, those who move to a different country need to assimilate and act like the white people, for lack of a better term. So the idea of holding on to individual instincts, the idea of holding on to individual uh, uh, principles or morals or an individual integrity, I think it's very important. And when it comes to the whole idea of, let's say, the unity consciousness or the idea of a unified global community, a unified global community is not a new world order where everyone looks alike, thinks alike, does the same kind of work, does the 9 to 5, 40 hour a day week, and there is no flexibility. For me, a unified global consciousness is where we do remain as individual as we want, but we have evolved as spiritual people to accept our differences, to accept different culture. And I'm not saying tolerate. Tolerate is a bad word in my book. Throw that word tolerate out. It's a disgusting word. Oh, I'm gonna deal with you having long hair. I'm gonna deal with you having darker skin. I'm gonna deal with you having a same-sex relationship. I'm going to deal with you being a Republican. I'm going to deal with you being a Democrat. I'm going to deal with you. Toleration is like tolerating an ant biting you in the arm and not swanning it off. No, a unified global community accepts one another no matter our differences. So, with that, let me ask you to take a moment and to think about where do you come from? Where do we come from? What Where were we before we were born? And I know there are many, many different types of beliefs in all of this, whether they be religious or atheistic or agnostic, pagan, Buddhist, whatever it may be. We do come from a place of non duality. And within that non duality, there is a certain, well, I'll call it for what it is. It's love. It's being in a place of pure light, pure love. There is no duality. There is no up and down. There is no time. There is no black or white or Democrat or Mexican or Texan or Norwegian or Chinese. It's non-dual love, the purest essence of divine mentality, divine spirituality, if that's what you wish to call it. And when we are called, let us say, called to incarnate on the planet, it is my personal belief that we choose. We choose to come back. And some believe, there are some beliefs that say, oh, you're going to keep coming back until you get it right. You have lessons to learn if you are one who subscribes to reincarnation and the idea of getting rid of your karma, that you will continue to come back to learn lessons. There are those who believe that we never come back, that we're going to end up, in eternity with our family and friends and whatnot. I personally don't subscribe to that. There are those who believe we move on to different planets. There are those who believe in other systems and mythologies. But the reality of it is that here we are, a beautiful, non-dual piece of spirit, a non-dual piece of the whole, that in order to experience life as a human being, we must incarnate into a human um, container, for lack of a better term. So here we are. We're born to our parents. We're born into this little, biological human container with our consciousness. And as our consciousness begins to develop, and one of the first things we learn is to trust our mother, to trust our father. Those are going to protect us. Those that are going to support us. Those are going to nourish us and give us a home and safety. And that, of course, is it can be aligned with the root chakra, the chakra of survival instincts and learning to survive on the planet. But what happens during the incarnation process is that we begin to experience life as human beings. We begin to experience hunger and unhappiness and fear and insecurity and all of the wonderful aspects of being human, like joy and love and just excitement, if that's what you want to call it. This process leads us into what I call the psychic amnesia. And what I mean by that is that we slowly, like with anything in life, time goes by and we begin to forget. Can you imagine how wonderful our lives could be right now at any age, no matter what age you are, if we had the ability to remember what we knew the day we were born, where we came from, what it was like, remembering the source of all things, if that's what you want to call it, to remember that non dualistic, metaphysical idea of love, but we don't. Time goes on. We learn to align with this particular plane of consciousness. We learn how to deal with other human beings, how to interact, and how to become a part of a family. How to become a part of a family, how to become part of a society. And in doing so, we do get what I call psychic amnesia. There seems to be this period, and it's probably fair to say that this comes right before adolescence. There's something to be said for physiology. You can't really do much when it comes to human physiology. We have to eat, we have to go to the bathroom, we have to stay warm, we have to grow. But at the same time, as we are growing, our body is changing, and there are chemicals involved, like testosterone or estrogen or whatever, depending on the sex that you evolved into at this point. That does affect the way that we think, and we begin to forget. And we really begin to forget as we move into adolescence and start going through puberty and whatnot. The idea of wanting to fit in, the idea of wanting to be a part of a tribe starts to happen. The idea of wanting to become more independent, which is all natural and all normal for the human experience. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, we do become more susceptible to social norms. And what I mean by social norms is what the television tells us, what the school tells us, what our families are telling us. And we are constantly bombarded with this information. And as an adolescent or someone who is going through puberty, we strive to be all of those things. We want to be the adult. I mean, how many people out there going through puberty didn't want to be a grown up? I mean, I don't remember any child of that age, that whole adolescent age of who didn't, God, I can't wait to be a grown up. I can't wait to be a grown up. We wanted to be those things. We wanted to have a car and a bank account and a mortgage and everything that, society ingrains into us. And unfortunately, we don't realize how wrong that is until it's too late. But it does become a part of the maturity process. And, maturing is a very positive thing. It's just depending on what our foundation is going to be in that maturing process. But as we mature and as we begin to grow into the individual of whatever name we were given, to whatever family name we were part of, to that person who lives in that community, who goes to that school or decides to become, I don't know, a doctor, a hairdresser, a cook, whatever it is you decide to be, we have to learn to align with and focus solely on that. So the psychic amnesia is pushed further, along. The spirit gets pushed further to the side. And this can also be included with religious upbringing. I was raised fairly religious, not very. My family was pretty secular, but we were Catholics, and I had to go to confirmation, and I had to go to mass, and I had to get first communion, all those things. And like many of us, depending on what our family is, that's the religious education that we're going to get, and that as well can lead to a lot of how shall we say, confusion. Because there is a part of us, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, there is a part of us when we are developing, whether socially or religiously, that chooses, or that not that chooses, that knows that something is not quite right. I remember being in, I guess it was catechism when you get ready for your first communion. And I remember being sent into the closet. I had to go to the closet and do confession to the priest. Or the priest was going in the closet with me, which was nothing happened though. I was lucky; it wasn't one of those priests, but it was still very scary. And the reason why I was put into the closet was because I asked Sister Mary Joseph or whatever her Mary Grace, Sister Mary Grace, Mary Grace, how can there be a Father, Son, and a Holy Spirit, and they're all one. And I questioned that. I questioned that. Does I said to her that doesn't make sense. And boy, did she get mad. And she said, "Get in the closet. You need to confess your sins. You questioned your faith. You need to be punished. You must confess this. You must do what's it called when you have to do 8 Hail Marys or whatever, your penance." And the same thing goes not only in religion, the same thing goes with schooling. The same thing goes with social groups. When we are developing and maturing and trying to figure out who we are at these ages, whether it be 7 to 17 or 7 to 37, as we're maturing and developing into these people, we are literally bullied into accepting the social, religious, or family norms, even though we do not align with them. Now, the thing is that I can probably bet you that the ones that are perpetuating this type of judgment, bullying, or telling us you must think like this, they probably went through the same thing. They probably went through the same thing of, well, maybe there isn't, uh, the Holy Trinity. Maybe there isn't, a gold, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow if I go to college and make lots of money. Maybe there isn't. And we question these these social norms. I bet you everyone has. And again, that for me is a part of the psychic amnesia where we forget to listen to ourselves. We begin to experience life. We begin to apply these social norms. We begin to apply these quote unquote educational or academic truths within our being. And more does our spirit and our intuition get pushed aside. More and more to the point where we have lost all true understanding of the experience that we're having. We are no longer experiencing, we are now reacting. That's a very important point I want to make. Very important point. We are now reacting to fit in to the particular social and or religious norms that have been spewed upon us. And I do mean spewed because most of the time it's not a very gentle learning process. Whether it comes to school, if you don't do things right at school, you get an F, and you have to repeat the grade. If you don't do things right in your religion, your pastor, your rabbi, your whatever is going to punish you in one way or another. So they're never easy. And our whole life, we're trained to fit in. We're trained to fit in, and in doing so, we lose our spiritual connection with our higher self. We lose our spiritual connection with who we truly are. But meanwhile, it's always there. It's always there in the background. We just lost that connection to it. And there's nothing wrong with experiencing life. There's some many examples that we do see where spirit does come through, where intuition does come through, where that connection with our divine self comes through. When you are, oh, I don't know. I remember as a teenager wanting to do like bungee jumping or ride the craziest roller coaster and just really enjoying the experience, the thrill, and and enjoying the thrill of being human, which there's nothing wrong with. There's nothing wrong with sex. There's nothing wrong with well, I don't want to promote anything, but there's nothing wrong with experimentation of consciousness altering substances. Experimentation. Addiction is a whole nother show, but let's hope nobody ever gets to that point. But the idea of wanting to change the way we feel, the way that we think, I think the whole idea of horror movies. So many people are into horror movies. I loved horror movies as a teenager. That thrill of being scared for a minute. Same thing with like roller coasters or whatnot. Enjoying the experience of being human there's nothing wrong with that. We're in a human body. We may as well. What does it feel like to hang glide? What does it feel like to lay on a beach all afternoon for one day? What does it feel like to to the top of a mountain? What does it feel like to be in love? What does it feel like to, go on a shamanic vision quest? What does it feel like? What does it feel like wanting that curiosity of feeling the sensations that the human body can sense is a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're harming nobody and you're not, being too detrimental to your own health and well-being, that's great. That's great. But as we are experiencing these things, we are also supporting the lifestyle that has been inherited within us through our school, through our religion, through our society, through the media, through the music we listen to. All of these things begin to mold our comprehension of what the world is around us. And most of the time, and it's very fair to say within the Western culture, that most of these things have to do with separating ourselves from nature, separating ourselves from who we truly are, and really altering our vibration to a level where we become more compliant. And I can go into the whole conspiracy thing about fluoride and the beats per minute or the megahertz of pop music and how that screws up your vibration, how heavy metal and pop and all that really lowers your vibration. But that's a whole nother show. Maybe we'll get somebody on here to talk about that one time. But you'll find that I remember this. I was going to make a comment about the music thing. I remember when I would get mad, and as a young person, I was mad a lot. I was an angry, rebellious teenager. I was an angry, rebellious 20-something, and actually, even into my early 30s, I was angry and rebellious. And what did I do? I'd roll a doobie and put on some. I'm not going to name a band, but let's just say it rhymes with Ithaca. You know, loud metal music, dun 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 dun, blasting it as loud as I can, and getting angrier and angrier and promoting that anger. So when people say music does not affect your psyche, they're lying. Yes, everyone has the freedom to listen to whatever music they want. That's fine. That's fine. I believe in freedom. I believe you need to experience it yourself. I believe in all of that stuff. Same thing goes with horror. I remember being a kid and getting angry and wanting to go to the midnight movie to watch, the zombie killer movies. And I just remember getting angrier and getting more depressed after I left there. It lowers your vibration, whether you want to admit it or not. Certain things in the media lower your vibration. I'm sure the World of Warcraft, which I do not play, it's not going to raise the vibration of our society. I am sure of that. And I know this is a typical, Nancy, what's her name? Nancy Reagan, just say no to drugs, just say no to heavy metal, just say no to war games. But the reality of it is that it changes the vibration and the way that the brain functions, whether you like it or not. And we need to find that honesty somewhere. And we're going to get to that. But again, we're experiencing life. We're going through all these different experiences, and we're learning what raises and lowers our vibration. And we kind of like that. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to play with your consciousness. It's a lot of fun to, I don't know, smoke a joint and ride a roller coaster. Ooh, this is weird. This is cool. It's a lot of fun to change your consciousness. It's a lot of fun to experience life as a human being. There's nothing wrong with that. Except eventually we begin to mature. Oh, we begin to mature. Our testosterone and our estrogen begin to balance out. We begin to start having a little more clarity. And if we are lucky, we have that beautiful spiritual awakening. We have that beautiful um, even geopolitical awakening. We start acknowledging the imbalances of the world. We start acknowledging the corruption. We start acknowledging the beauty of the world. We start acknowledging our in, infinite possibility. We start acknowledging life. We start acknowledging love. We start acknowledging our spiritual infinite consciousness nature that is a part of our human incarnation here, we begin to realize we are spirits having a human experience. And if we are spirits having a human experience, we start and we begin to understand our own personal divinity, and we begin to acknowledge the social conditioning that we were put under. We begin to mature to the fact that a lot of the things that worked for us when we were 19 don't work for us anymore. We begin to acknowledge that a lot of the truths we held for our goals in life, they don't work for us anymore. We start wanting to, I don't want to say shut down, but to separate again. And what I mean by separate, I mean separating ourselves from the ugliness of the world, separating ourselves from the corruption of the world, separating ourselves from each other. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. Is there a healthy way to do it? Yes, we'll talk about that after the break. But as we begin to get, how shall I say, insolent, our insolence to listen to our intuition starts to come through. And as the insolence to listen to our intuition starts to come through, yeah, call it the awakening process, call it, I'm awake, I'm not a sheeple. I don't like that word sheeple. Please don't ever use it on my page. Sheeple is so rude, but let's just say not as conscious. Am I a conscious person? Yes. Am I not? Am I one of the not as conscious people? No, I'm not one of the not as conscious people. But as that consciousness begins to arise in us, and as that clarity begins to come to us, things become different. And again, I like that idea that we become insolent to listen to our gut, to listen to our intuition, and to begin to make changes in our life, begin to make changes in the world around us. Call it the awakening. Call it the awakening. Call it an epiphany, if that's what you wish to call it. But as we begin to reclaim our intuition, as we begin to reclaim what we know is right for us in our heart, at what we know is not helpful to us, what we know is not helpful to creating a peaceful society, we find ourselves in a state of, and I use this term a lot, and please look it up if you don't know what it means, but it's called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance. And I'll give you my little quick version of the definition of cognitive dissonance is, a great example. I know that the petroleum cartels, the oil cartels, are destroying the world, destroying the environment, and keeping us in the grips of a oppressive monetary system. That's my reality. That's the way I see it. We are slaves to these oil cartels. But I need to go to the grocery store, so I am going to put gasoline in yes, I drive a 100 mile per gallon scooter, but I still need to use that gasoline. So I'm going to put gasoline in, and I'm going to pay the gasoline and to drive so I can have food. When I get to the grocery store, am I going to buy the healthy, locally bought foods? I'll try, but depending on the economy at that time, I'm either going to have to buy the mega global corporate version, the best that I can, the cheapest, that's the healthiest, that's the least environmentally destructive version. So cognitive dissonance is what's right, what works for you, but you do the opposite anyway. Because either you're forced to through society, you're forced through economy, or because you just don't have the courage to say, no, I'm not going to. I know I'm not going to join the military. I don't believe in war. No, I'm not going to support the military. I don't believe in killing people. But you and your friends are all very pro-military, or maybe your political affiliation might be very pro-military, or maybe your family works for Lockheed Martin and they're making so much money that you don't dare say nothing negative about the military because it puts food on your table. But deep inside that the war machine is something that has to be gotten rid of in order for us to live in a peaceful, harmonious planet. That's cognitive dissonance. Knowing better, but doing the opposite anyway. Some might call it insanity, quite honestly. Knowing better, but doing it anyway. And within this cognitive dissonance, so we're going through this awakening of our spirit within this human body. So the human has to experience what humans experience. We have to turn on lights. We have to use electricity. We have to drive cars to get to work. We have to go to church or whatever it is that you belong to. You have to go and align with your political party if that's what you've been doing, or else people are going to think you're crazy. And I personally did go through that. I was courageous enough to drop everything, to drop my career, to drop my home, to drop my beliefs, to drop my political affiliation, to drop my religious affiliation, and just say, this is all a bunch of baloney. And I started the GIC, but not everyone can get away with that. So we're going to live in cognitive dissonance. To this day, I still live in cognitive dissonance on certain issues. Like St. Paddy's Day. I love going out and having a great time on St. Paddy's Day, but I know it's celebrating a horrible man who murdered thousands of Druids and Celts back in the day, perpetuating the Catholic Empire, which I don't believe in. There is a way to deal with the idea of cognitive dissonance. Again, as spirits living in this body, as strangers living in this strange land, we are motivated to find others like us. We are motivated to find organizations, to find groups, to find radio stations like Revolution Radio, to find radio shows like mine, to find community centers that organize these types of events that we can align with. So there is a way to handle the cognitive dissonance. There is a way for us not to feel so alone. And I firmly believe that is a big part of it. Not to feel like you are left alone in the wilderness. And that is unfortunately, a very sad side effect of having this type of awareness, of having a consciousness that has been elevated out of the social norm of the planet, or perhaps remembering our elevated level of consciousness and saying, God, what have I been doing? How could I have been supporting all this anger? How could I have been supporting all of this destruction? How can I support all of these things that make me go into a lower vibratory consciousness, living in a lower vibratory way? And some of us will go through this whole purity thing where we need to be, what's the word, an orthodox awakened person, orthodox consciousness. So never going to eat meat, never going to buy from a corporation. I'm moving off grid, and you know what? And that's great. If you can move off grid and never, deal with a corporation or anything like that, that's fantastic. But a majority of us don't have that ability. A majority of us aren't wealthy enough to move off grid, produce our own energy, grow our own food, take care of our own medical expenses. We are still living in the quote unquote 3.5D matrix. And for that, I do say, find others who have awakened. It's either on the internet or it's out there somewhere in your community, and you'll find different levels of it. I remember a few years back having this wonderful dream of being in New York City. It was a dream. I'm walking down the street in New York City, and it's crowded. I'm walking down, let's say, I don't know, Broadway, one of the big busy streets there, and it's filled with people. And all of a sudden, I kind of like raised up. I ended up floating up just above the heads of the other people walking. And I looked around and I saw other people's heads floating up above the other people that are walking. And we all kind of looked at each other and said, "Oh, you're awake, aren't you? Oh, you're awake. Yeah, I'm awake. You're awake. Yeah, I'm awake." And it kind of motivated me to seek others. And that's probably why I started the GIC, one of the many reasons. But there are others that are awakened. And again, the whole awakening process is different for everybody. Some may awaken to political corruption, some may awaken to geopolitics, some may awaken to GMOs, some may awaken to the whole idea that we are spirits incarnate in human bodies. Some may awaken to the human possibility. Some may awaken to the need to create a new paradigm and a way of living on the planet. There are very different levels, and wherever you are, find find others that can make you can help you to feel a part of a community. It's very important that you know that you're not alone. But as we're going through this cognitive dissonance, we start doing spiritual practices. Most of us, it's fair to say, most of us are going to be doing spiritual practices to understand a little bit more about our clarity, a little bit more about our direction, whether it be meditation, whether it be yoga, whether it be, oh, I don't know, joining a pagan group or joining a Buddhist group or whatever it may be. People are going to start searching for a clear understanding. And one of the things that happens is that we have to learn how to alter our state of consciousness at will. And I talked about this earlier, but now I'm going to get a little bit more into it. We end up having to learn how to alter our state of consciousness at will. And what I mean by that is having the ability to alter your state of consciousness to be able to get up and go to work and work for, oh, I don't know, IBM or whatever it is that you do. I have a friend of mine who's I would consider fairly awakened, but he works for Bank of America. Not somebody I would want to work for, but that's who's paying the bills, and he's got a great job. And, you know, yeah, if it was me, I'd quit my job, but this person's not at that place. So they must, or if you have a job like that, you must alter your state of consciousness to align with that, to be in a place where you are just going to do your best to make the world a better place when you're not at work, but you have to at least be able to get up and go to work and enjoy your presence there, to understand that it is a part of your journey, of your path, of your evolution. It's not forever. You know, you may eventually continue as you are continuing down this path. You will eventually align with a better position. You will eventually align with something that's more suited for your inner truth. But you're going to have to alter your state of consciousness to have the drive and the motivation just to even get up to go to work in the morning. It's just something we must do. Altering our state of consciousness as well when it comes to our buying practices, our celebratory practices, our socializing practices. You know, am I going to socialize with a bunch of right-wing crazy libertarians, or am I going to socialize with more progressive, loving, compassionate libertarians? Just an example. Am I going to socialize with a bunch of head-banging, beer-drinking idiots that just want to go bowling and go cow tipping? Or am I going to socialize with people that perhaps want to have a bonfire party and sit around and discuss, you know, I don't know, metaphysics? You know, am I going to socialize with the snobberies and the snobs of the neighborhood or the snobs of my city, the hipsters and those that are completely not in full consciousness and celebrate, you know, corporate logos and Fendi and Dolce & Gabbana and whatnot? Or am I going to socialize with those who enjoy a good local, you know, locally grown co-op food market and go out to dinner at a local grass-fed steak, you know, house or something? You know, So we begin to alter our state of consciousness. We begin to allow changes to happen in a way that is not necessarily perfect. I don't believe there's perfection in this lifetime. I think perfection is a state of mind. If you are in the moment, you are perfect. That's the way I look at it. Simple as that. If you are in the moment, you are perfect because you are perfectly experiencing your consciousness at any given moment. That's perfection. As far as action, as far as thoughts, as far as how we look, how we dress, where we go, there is no such thing as perfection. But what happens as we continue this awakening process, as we continue to acknowledge we are these spirits having a human experience, as we continue to understand and how do I say, come to a place where that stranger in a strange land situation no longer is a hindrance, but a celebration of who we are. We begin again with that struggle for integrity, and That's a real tough one. That's a real tough one. That struggle for integrity, where you do want to go off grid. You do want to move into a cooperative community off grid and never have to deal with never deal with a corporation or a bank again, and you will only be loving and kind and accepting and whatnot. There's a struggle for integrity that goes on, but I will say that struggle for integrity is what I would now call motivation. It is something that motivates me as Bernard Alvarez. I struggle for the integrity of walking the path that I talk, walking the talk. Do I feel I walk the talk? I would say 90% of what I talk about, I do walk. Yes, absolutely. Again, do I like going and partying on St. Patty's Day? Of course I like to go party on St. Patty's Day. Do I find it offensive? Yeah, I do. So there's that 10%. But the integrity of following through on what you say, the integrity of treating people with kindness and support and acceptance, the integrity of not being a hypocrite, the integrity of facing your own shortcomings and dealing with them, the integrity of knowing right from wrong. And that's a very, very gray area, because if we're talking about right from wrong, it's relative. It's all relative. Is a forest fire right or wrong? Is a naturally, let's say, lightning strikes into a dried up old forest and there's a forest fire. Is that right or wrong? Is it good or is it evil? The reality of it is, for me, I see that forest fires is getting rid of the old brush and letting the new sprouts come up, letting the new saplings have room for growth. But some people have a very, very pronounced and judgmental way of looking at what is right and wrong. I've learned to come to a place where I love the old. I forgot. I don't know if it was actually Gerald Gardner who created it, but the Wiccan Reed is, do what you will, harming none. Harm none. You can do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. What is so hard? What is so wrong about that? Is there anything wrong about that? I think that's probably one of the most uh, loving, compassionate, and libertarian ways of looking at the world. Do what you will, as long as you're not harming anybody, not harming yourself, not harming the land, not harming another human being. That's where we get rid of the judgment. That's where we begin to live in acceptance of one another. When we can embrace and have the awareness of what's good for me may not be good for somebody else. What works for me may not work for somebody else. When we can have that integrity and fall back on the idea that they have the right to do what they do, I have the right to do what I do. And the most important thing is, though, in all of this, is not to care one way or the other. And I know that sounds how existential, Maybe that sounds like a spoiled little brat. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you say. But the idea comes from the concept of not being attached to particular outcomes. And that's one of the things that I promote very, very much. And it's something that does come with understanding our spiritual selves having a human experience. When we become attached to outcomes, whether it be what other people think about us, whether it be what we expect to happen if we do something, right there we begin setting ourselves up for failure. We begin to set ourselves up for frustration, and we begin to set ourselves up for ego. Let's say you're expecting to, I don't know, marry that beautiful girl from high school. Great example. And let's say you do. Let's say you do. All of a sudden, you're going to start thinking, well, I can get whatever I want. I can get any woman I want, that kind of thing. Or for failure. Let's say you decide that you're going to work on a project and you're expecting to get a big payoff at the end of it, but the whole deal falls through. That's setting yourself up for insecurity. Joseph Campbell talks about it the best when he says that we must come to a place where we are the observer of life. We participate, we enjoy it, but we are the observer. We are more the, how shall we say, there's a certain word he used to use, I'm sorry, but it's kind of the person who watches versus the player. We're not the player in the play. We're watching the play. We just happen to be in the play. Looking at it from an observer's point of view and understanding, or perhaps even better to say, looking at it from the spiritual or the spirit sense of the human experience. You are the spirit within the human body. You are a spirit within a human body having a human experience. And with that, spirit understands and spirit knows that there is no room for expectation or clinging to outcome. Clinging to outcome, again, will affect the ego, will affect insecurity. Doing the best you can, doing who you are, being in alignment with your integrity, being in alignment with your intuition, being in alignment for the highest good of yourself and everyone involved, being in alignment with the love that is pulsing through you, the life that is pulsing through you, being in alignment with happiness, with joy, with non-judgment, with acceptance, being in alignment with all of these things is going to bring you, and again, without expectation, is going to bring you greater joy, greater happiness, greater life experience, more happiness, more joy, more spiritual awareness. So to think that we need to align with a specific outcome almost becomes devolving. Almost becomes like, oh, well, that's the caveman inside of me wanting to cling to the certain outcome. That's the human in me. That's the lizard in me. Yeah, we all have reptilian brain cells, whether you like it or not. That's the reptile in me. I need it this way. It has to be like this. Whereas the spirit within us understands it's just a part of the human experience. And I'm just riding this wave and riding the flow, this journey. Where it takes me, I don't know. Where is this human journey taking me? I don't know. Do you know where your human journey is taking you? Seriously, do you know where your human journey is taking you? If you were to look back in your life 10 years ago and look at your life right now, would you have expected to be where you are, exactly where you are right now? Think about it. 10 years ago, depending on how old you are, maybe you were in high school, maybe you were in college, maybe you were at your first job. But even 10 years ago, you had a completely different concept of where you were going to be right now. And within that 10 years, I think 98% of you, your plans changed, your direction changed, Life happened, distraction happened, and or you aligned with your higher self and decided to move in a completely different direction. But I can bet you 98% of you did not expect to be where you are today. We're not fortune tellers. We cannot tell the future. If 10 years ago somebody would have said to me, I'd be doing radio shows, or I would have written a book, or I'd be Bernard Alvarez, whatever that might mean, on the internet. I might be, what's it called? I'm famous on the internet. If someone would have said you'd be famous on the internet 10 years ago, I'd be like, what's the internet? Oh, isn't that AOL? I don't even know how to use AOL. But, let's be realistic here. The reality of it is we didn't know. And so we have to be open and aware to allowing our spirit to move us into the direction that is needed for us to grow and to experience the experiences that we have actually been calling into our lives. Now, I'm not going to say that, I'm not saying that every disaster that happens to somebody, or horrible crime or illness or something, that they're asking for it. I'm not one of those crazy law of attraction, orthodox or law of attraction people, as I like to call them. You know, there is room for, natural disaster. There is room for, the bottom falling out of the economy. There are just things that just happen to happen. Nobody asked for the Depression. Nobody asked for 9/11. Nobody asked for, there wasn't this intention out there, subconscious or otherwise. Things do happen. Things do happen. But I will say that the more that we are open to allowing change, the more we are open to looking at this world from intuition, not necessarily from intention, you will notice that your intuition is going to tell you, just let it go. Just let it go. It's better if you just let it go. Your intuition most likely is going to tell you everything's fine. You're moving in the direction you need to go. And it'll let you know when you're moving in the wrong direction. And we're going to talk more about that in just a few minutes. But before we move on to the break, I just want to, again, I want to thank everybody and let you all know that the new website is running and getting better and better every day. You will find this particular show there available in the next couple weeks, as well as plenty more of the consciousness talks that I have done over the years. You can find all of my information. You can find my book. You can find the events that I'm doing live. I do many live events here in Roanoke. You can find all the work that I've been doing at BernardAlvarez.com. That's BernardAlv as in Victor, AREZ as in zebra.com. And it's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. There's going to be so much content on there. I hope I can't keep up, quite honestly, but I'm very grateful that I've been given this opportunity. Here, a great example. If you would have told me even a month ago that the GIC would have been dissolved and I'd be building BernardAlvarez.com, I would have said you're crazy. And that was only a month ago. And now BernardAlvarez.com is there. Check it out. There's plenty to see, plenty to watch, plenty to read. Everything from activism to GMOs, to consciousness, to 9/11, all types of information is there for you to enjoy. And I hope you'll become a member and support the work that I'm doing. And, of course, I hope you will support the work we're doing here at Revolution Radio. When we come back from this break coming up, we're going to start talking a little bit more about self-discipline. I know nobody likes that, but I'm going to make it fun for you. Self-discipline is really hard, but it can be fun, and there's something to be said for that. I like to call it self-vigilance, and it's being vigilant and in the alignment with your true self. And there is a place for self-discipline in all of this. I know that much of what I have been talking about, whether it be doing what you will and harming nobody, may sound a little bit existential. or irresponsible. But the reality of it is the responsibility of aligning with your higher nature. And I'm not saying your true human nature. I'm not saying what you believe your ego's nature might be or what your ego might believe your nature is. I'm talking about aligning with your higher self and listening to that intuition that is trying to nudge you every once in a while. It's nudging you, maybe more times than you want to admit. But I always say that self discipline is not necessarily doing without. So many times when we hear the word self-discipline, we think of sacrifice. I need to eat low cal, I need to drink less, I need to work out more, I need to stay away from those people, I need to. This is not what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about self-discipline, I'm talking about aligning with that voice inside, that higher voice, that intuition, that understanding of your higher being, and being vigilant to nurture that. What do I mean by being vigilant to nurture your higher self? Well, being vigilant to me, and I can only share with you what I experienced within my own um, understanding of being a spirit, having a human experience, is being vigilant to what I expose my senses to. And I've spoken about this in the past, but this goes very well in this particular talk. That if we are going to align with our higher selves, if we are going to live as genuine human beings, or genuinely as a spirit within a human body, if we are going to live genuinely as a stranger in a strange land, if we're going to live genuinely as a good person, we must begin to develop that conversation with our higher self. We must begin to be vigilant in what we expose our senses to. What do I mean by that? Well, it's been very clear and very evident that most corporate media, most, not all, but most corporate media is going to brainwash you. Yeah, believe it or not, you've probably been brainwashed a little bit by the media. Growing up, watching Sesame Street, brainwashed by school, brainwashed by religion, brainwashed by your family, brainwashed by your culture, brainwashed by nationalism, brainwashed by trying to fit in, brainwashed. We all are brainwashed to an extent, whether we want to admit it or not. So, what I suggest and what I promote in learning to live in a higher conscious state, to learning to have that connection with your higher self, to learning how to live genuinely as a stranger in a strange land, is to be vigilant as to what you expose your senses to. What do I mean by that? Well, we've heard it 1,000 times, and I'll say it again. Throw away the TV. Get rid of the television. Get rid of your television. First of all, you don't need it anymore because most of it's on the internet now. But the reality of it is that we've been conditioned as a society that we need to have a television, that we need to have it on, and we need to watch the shows that everyone else is watching so we can have a discussion with everybody about those shows, right? You want to be able to talk about who was on Dancing with the Stars, and you want to be able to talk about. No, you don't. You know you don't. You know you don't. You know you could probably care less. You just get off on the idea of knowing the same thing that everybody else knows. Of knowing who was on Lost, or I don't even know if that show's still on, of knowing, The Bachelor, or, whatever the show du jour is that everyone is going on and on about, you feel a certain egoistic stroke of knowing, of watching, of seeing it before everybody else. You don't need it. You don't need it. Now, is there a place for programs, regular silly programs as a diversion? Of course. I have it. I have Netflix. I'll spend my day off watching 4 or 5 hours of I don't know, House of Cards, something like that. Of course, we all deserve diversion, but there's something to be said for diversion versus having this box playing and making noise and getting into your subconscious 24/7. Don't turn the darn thing on. The one thing I will say, and people say, "Oh, well, you still have the internet. That's programming." There's a difference between internet programming and television programming. First of all, and I know that on television there are 200 channels of nothing, right? You have 200 channels, and what do? You skip, 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 skip. But in the meantime, your brain is picking up on everything that is going on that television. Everything, every word, every golf game, every bowling tournament, every home shopping network, cubic zirconia ring on sale. It's all getting picked up by your subconscious. And it's all information you don't need, and it's all information that may come up later on that you don't realize might be affecting your decision choices, your decision capabilities. Get rid of the television. Get rid of it. Throw it out. Step one, being aware of what you expose your senses to. Being aware of the music you listen to. Is the music you listen to causing you to get angry? Is the music you're listening to causing your central nervous system to get excited? Is the music you're listening to making your heart beat faster? Is it changing your physiology for the worse and not the better? I love music. I love all types of music. I'm not even pointing fingers at any genre of music. I'm not. Do I like Lady Gaga once in a while? Once in a while. Do I like country music once in a while? Once in a while. Do I like hip hop once in a while? Once in a while. In short increments, as if the mood suits me, I'll listen to a song or two and I move on to the next thing. But the reality of it is that as something that we identify, and this is what happens especially with music. People identify with the music they listen to. It becomes we allow it to become a part of our personality. And then we get offended when people don't like our music. Again, another cause for divisiveness. Do we really need to have more divisiveness in our lives? I remember so many times I've heard stories of people saying, "Oh, I can't date him. He listens to hip hop. Oh, I can't date her. She listens to classical. Oh, I can't date her. She actually likes jazz music. Oh, she listens to country." It becomes this divisive thing. Music is meant to inspire us. Music is meant to help us align with our spirit. Believe it or not, think about it. Music is an expression of melody, of beauty, of something that is supposed to elevate us to a different place. If your music is not elevating you or inspiring you, think about it. And again, look at what it does to your central nervous system. Look at the mood it creates. It was funny. I had a situation here. My roommate was playing house music at like 8:30 in the morning the other day, and I'm like, "You're kidding me, right?" I'm like, "You know what that reminds me of? 8:30 in the morning, listening to boom, 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 boom." Don't get me wrong. I like house music at 11:30 at night after I've had 6 beers and I'm at a nightclub. Yeah. There's a time and a place for everything. Don't get me wrong. Do I like it? Of course I do, but not at 8:30 in the morning. Look, but again, it was because of the way it was affecting my body. It was giving me anxiety. And not because I don't like it. It was because it was 8:30 in the morning and my brain wasn't at that place. Learn to nurture your brain. Self-discipline is about being honest with how you feel at that particular moment. Self-discipline is about creating a comfortable, how shall we say, a fluidic way of allowing your spirit to express itself, allowing your spirit to manifest itself. And if you're going to be listening to, I don't know, heavy metal music with breakfast and watching Fox News 24 hours a day in the background, your spirit is not going to have much room to enhance, to evolve, and to allow you to have a greater clear connection with your higher self. What's the higher self? What is the he's talking about the higher self again. What is he talking about? For me, the higher self is that part of you. Remember at the beginning of the talk, I was saying, well, we incarnated. Where did we incarnate from? We incarnated from the source of all things, the non-dualistic energy of love, for lack of a better term. Our higher self is that piece of us. It is the spirit that is incarnate in this human body. It is that piece of source. It is that piece of God, goddess, whatever you want to call it, that resides within us. And I feel it's so important for us to learn to begin to have a relationship, if we already have one, to enhance that relationship. So in order to enhance that relationship with that spark, that divine spark that is within us, our higher self, we must learn to be vigilant of what we expose our senses to, of what we put in our body. You know what? I smoke, I drink on, what's that called? In moderation. You want to smoke, you want to drink, do it in moderation. You want to eat, I don't know, you want to eat meat, have a hamburger. I love hamburgers. Maybe once a week, and maybe once every 2 weeks, sure. But having self-discipline means vigilance in taking care of that relationship with your divine spark, your higher self. Watch what you want. Watch out what you're watching. What are you putting into your subconscious? What are you putting into your spirit? What are you putting into this human body? And what are you exposing yourself to? And what I mean by that is, who are you working with? Who are you aligning with? The people that you hang out with, the people who either are going to enhance this evolution or take away from it. And then lastly, we're running out of time. I thought I wouldn't have enough material. I have a lot more, actually, but I'm hoping that I can get my point across when it comes to this last point. It's not the last point, but maybe I'll save the rest for another talk, is to finally surrendering to the spirit. And actually, this probably should be a whole separate talk. Surrendering to the spirit. So that's a tough one. When I say surrendering to spirit, I am relating to, and I don't like the word faith, let us say having a good, clear understanding of that connection with our higher selves gives us the support that we need, and we know we have the support, if that makes sense. To know that I am in the right place, to know that I am moving in the right direction, to know that in nourishing my higher self and nourishing that divine spark within me, I don't need to compromise. And what I mean by compromise, there's a place for compromise, but I don't need to compromise my integrity. And I think that's the most important thing. Learning to surrender to your spirit means that what your intuition is saying is right for you is right for you. And I'm not talking about your ego. I'm not talking about being defensive, like, oh, well, you eat GMOs. You're no good. I don't want to hang around you. That's not what I'm talking about. That's being judgmental. I'm not talking about what your ego thinks is good for your spirit. I'm talking about that place in you that comes from love, where you can reside in love, and allowing that love to guide you. Allowing love to be your inspiration. Allowing divine love to give you the opportunity to create a new world for yourself, a new world around us, allowing yourself to make different decisions, allowing yourself to live in the integrity of what you know is best for you. Again, no ego. Not best for somebody else. That's not up to me. Do I have a concept of how the world can be a better place? Yeah, I think I have a concept of how the world can be a better place. But the only way that I'm going to create change around me is to create change within me and to be the example. We can protest all we want, and all we're ever going to get are crumbs. How long have we been protesting? Thousands of years. The elites still control the world. The world is still being oppressed of its true spiritual nature, and it's not getting better. It's getting worse. So, yes, I do. Yeah, I love to protest. I love to scream what's wrong with the world. But the reality of it is it is not until we learn to live in love within our own selves and to be the example that we are ever going to create change. Change is not going to be going to happen overnight. It's not going to be like one of these things where we flip the switch. We have a consciousness revolution, and we've decided we are just not. We don't need government, or we don't need corporations, or we don't need GMOs, or we're not going to participate. We're not going to comply. That's all well and dandy. It's not going to happen overnight. It's done one person at a time, and that starts with you. And in order for this to happen, and in order for this to uh, evolve into a global movement of creating change on the planet, of not allowing a quote unquote new world order to take hold, of not allowing ourselves to go down the toilet as a race or as a planet, because it's not just about humanity, it's about life on the planet. It's about the animals, it's about the plants, it's about the air, it's about the water, it's about the food, it's about life on this planet. And if we are going to create life on the planet, we need to align with life, our special higher self, our special divine spark, and surrendering to that with integrity, with vigilance, and knowing that your choices, no matter what other people may say, no matter what other people may think, are right for you. It takes a lot of courage to live like this. It takes a lot of courage to live like this. And I'm going to share something very personal with everybody here at this point, because I personally had made a decision recently when we decided to dissolve the GIC and when we decided I was going to move on. I had to come to a place in order for this to work, and it's working. I had to come to a place where I threw out all the advice that was given to me. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure those of you that have been following me for a while now, GIC was always having financial problems. Always. We could barely make it by. I could barely make it by because I got paid through GIC. I could barely make it. And I don't want money. Don't get me wrong. I mean, yes, I need money to sustain the work that I'm doing. That's one thing. But the reality of it is I don't like the money system. I've never liked the money system. I found it to be oppressive. I find it to be an insult to my spirit. And yet, even within the activists that I've worked with and people that I've worked with in the consciousness movement and whatnot, they're like, well, money is just a form of energy, and it's an exchange of energy, and you deserve, to charge $100 or $200 or $300 or $1,000 for a weekend workshop, and I'm like, no, 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 it doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That to me, that now becomes a compromise. That now becomes a compromise. If you want to support my work and you like my work, thank you. Subscribe to my website. Thank you. Yes, I need to pay the bills. Yes, I need to do that. But to look at it like a business, to look at this type of work, to look at consciousness, to look at activism as a business, isn't that whole monetary system, wasn't that created by the oppressors in the first place? Isn't the idea of business kind of created by the oppressors in the first place? So I tried to align with that. Don't get me wrong. I did. I have a book for sale for 11.11. I try to sell my book. I try to get people to, support me and whatnot. That, whatever. But to look at that as a fundraising or a business, or, I saw a post the other day from a fellow consciousness leader, And they're like, well, you need to have money, whether you like it or not. You can hate money and this and that, but you need to have money. You know what? I don't need money. I don't. And I told the universe, and I told the board of directors of the GIC, I've told my family, and I've told my friends, I'm done. I'm done. I don't like the money system. I don't want to accumulate money. If I have the money to do the work, I have the money to do this work. If I have the money to pay the bills for the website, I have the money to pay the bills for the website. If I have the money to pay someone to do editing or to pay for licensing or to pay for it, that's fine. But you know what? When the money runs out, it runs out. And if the money runs out and I become homeless, then I become homeless. But I am not going to compromise. I am not going to comply. And that, for me, was surrendering to spirit. That, for me, is saying, I trust my higher self. I trust this work, and I trust the people of this planet that we can make things better.